amid the smoldering remains of Earth's last stand. The air was thick with ash and the metallic tang of blood. Alien war machines still glowed red-hot where they had fallen, their twisted hulls groaning like dying beasts. The battlefield was silent now, save for the crackle of fire and the distant rumble of collapsing towers. He lay among the ruins, broken, his armor shattered and his body barely clinging to life. His breath came shallow, each inhale scraping his chest like glass. He thought of the explosion he had survived, the searing heat that had torn through his squad, the screams that had faded into silence. His vision blurred, colors bleeding into darkness, and with each passing second he was certain he would die forgotten, just another nameless body left to rot in alien soil. His fingers twitched, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. His mind clung to images of comrades falling one by one, of the banner of humanity crushed under alien boots. He tried to rise, but pain lashed him back down, his ribs aflame, his legs unresponsive. Perhaps this was mercy, he thought. Perhaps death would finally come and free him from the torment of loss. His eyelids grew heavy, the weight of oblivion pressing harder, and as he sank into it, he felt strangely at peace. But then footsteps, light, hesitant, crunching over broken stone. He thought at first it was an enemy, come to finish what their weapons had started, and he braced for the cold end of a blade. Yet instead of steel, he felt hands, trembling, warm, human. A voice whispered his name, ragged with fear and relief. His mind wanted to dismiss it as a hallucination, a dying dream, but the touch lingered too long, too real. Fingers brushed his cheek, smearing soot and blood. He forced his eyes open, and through the haze he saw her. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hair matted from the smoke, but to him she looked like salvation. She knelt beside him, her breath sharp, her hands desperate as they searched his ruined body for signs of life. She was shaking, not from fear but from the sheer will to keep him tethered here, in this broken world, with her. "You're not leaving me," she whispered, the words fierce despite her quivering lips. "Do you hear me? Not like this. Not tonight." He wanted to tell her to run, to escape before the patrols returned, before the ruins swallowed her too. But his mouth refused to form the words, only a cracked rasp of breath escaping. She pressed her forehead to his, and for a moment time froze around them. The fires dimmed, the world fell silent, and all that remained was her trembling devotion. She slid her arms beneath him, straining to lift his weight. He was heavy, broken, every movement drawing a groan from his torn flesh. She didn't care. Inch by inch, she dragged him across the debris, her legs buckling, her lungs heaving, but she refused to stop. Each time she faltered, she looked down at him and whispered his name like a prayer, reminding herself he was still here, still breathing, still hers to save. Through collapsed corridors and burning alleys, she carried him, hiding from shadows of alien patrols scanning the ruins. Her body ached, her muscles screamed, but her grip never loosened. She found a narrow tunnel carved beneath the rubble, a forgotten shelter from wars past. Inside, the air was damp and cold, yet safer than the open battlefield above. She laid him gently on the cracked floor, brushing the hair from his blood-stained forehead, her tears falling to mingle with the dust. He watched her through half-lidded eyes, his chest barely rising. She was fire in human form, fragile yet unbreakable, terrified yet unyielding. She pressed her hands against his wounds, trying to stanch the bleeding with scraps of cloth torn from her own clothes. Her tears blurred her vision, but she kept working, whispering promises he couldn't quite hear. He thought then of how absurd it was, this broken soldier, this ruined battlefield, and her refusing to let him go. He had been ready to die, ready to fade into ash and be forgotten. Yet here she was, clinging to him as if his life mattered more than her own, trembling not because she feared death, but because she feared a world without him. The darkness still pulled at him, tempting, heavy, but now there was her warmth pressed against his side, her hands refusing to release him. And for the first time since the battle began, he no longer wanted to surrender to the void. As sleep threatened to drag him away, he felt her lips brush his temple, soft yet desperate. "Stay with me," she whispered again, voice breaking. "If you go, I go with you. Do you understand?" His eyes fluttered shut, but inside, something sparked. Not strength, not yet, but a will, a reason. If she refused to let him go, then he would not go. He cannot. In that dark shelter beneath the ruins of the world, a broken soldier clung to life, not for himself, but for her trembling devotion. And though he didn't yet know it, this was only the beginning of something far greater, something that would make the universe remember their names. The ruins shelter was little more than a hollow carved beneath collapsed stone, a place where dust clung to every breath and the air reeked of scorched metal. Yet to her, it was sanctuary because he was there, broken, bloodied, but still breathing. She crouched at his side, every flicker of her torchlight revealing the horror of his wounds. Shattered ribs jutted beneath bruised skin, his body riddled with burns that glowed faintly, unnaturally, as though some alien fire had taken root inside him. Every so often his flesh shimmered with a dangerous light, a pulse of heat that seared through the air. She should have feared it. Instead, she pressed closer. Her trembling hands moved with desperation, tearing strips of fabric from her clothes to bind his wounds. But as her palms brushed his chest, she felt it. The heat wasn't just pain. It was energy, unstable, wild, threatening to tear him apart from within. He groaned, body arching as though the fire inside sought escape. She gritted her teeth and leaned over him, whispering through the panic, "Stay with me. I'll hold you together. I swear it." Her tears streaked down his soot-stained cheek as she pressed her lips against his skin, soft and desperate, as though the kiss could anchor him. For a heartbeat, the wild glow dimmed. His ragged breaths steadied. She gasped, realizing that her closeness, her touch, was the only thing keeping the fire from consuming him. He opened his eyes, barely, embers glowing faintly where his pupils had once been. "I burn," he rasped, voice hoarse as gravel. "Get away before I tear you apart." She shook her head fiercely, her hair falling into his face, her lips trembling as they brushed his ear. "No, if you burn, I burn with you. You don't get to leave me. Not after I found you. Not after this." And then, with a kind of desperation she had never known, she kissed him. Not gentle, not hesitant, but raw. Mouth to mouth, her breath becoming his breath, her heartbeat pressed against his chest as though she could replace his faltering rhythm with her own. His body surged, fire flaring beneath his skin, yet instead of consuming her, the blaze folded inward, channeled, tamed by her closeness. He gasped in her mouth, fingers twitching against the floor until they found her wrist. Weak as he was, his grip tightened, as if he feared she might vanish. She deepened the kiss, tears mingling with sweat, whispering between breaths, "You live because I demand it. Do you hear me? You live." Hours blurred in the suffocating dark. She pressed damp cloth to his wounds, cooled his burning flesh with water stolen from a broken pipe, and each time the fire threatened to overwhelm him, she soothed him with her touch. At first, it was her hands, stroking his jaw, brushing through his hair, grounding him in the human softness the aliens had tried to erase. But as the night stretched on, it became more. Her lips traced the lines of his scars, her body curling around his, her skin against his glowing heat like a shield. Every brush of her mouth, every desperate embrace, was more than comfort. It was survival. The alien fire inside him calmed when she touched him, when she kissed him, when she gave herself fully to him as though her body was an offering. He shuddered beneath her, torn between agony and hunger, but each time she whispered his name, his fire bent, softened, steadied. It felt like worship, not the worship of gods and temples, but of something far more primal. She worshipped his survival with every breath, every kiss, every shiver of her body pressed to his. She worshipped the broken man who had refused to die, the fire that threatened to consume him but instead found peace in her embrace. And he, in turn, began to worship her. Even in weakness, even half-dead, his gaze clung to her as though she was all that tethered him to existence. His ember-bright eyes softened whenever she leaned close, his trembling fingers brushing her cheek, his hoarse whispers begging her never to stop. At one point the fire surged violently, racking his body until he cried out, chains of light tearing along his scars. She straddled him, pinning his thrashing form with her own, her lips crushing against his in a kiss so fierce it silenced his scream. For a moment their bodies glowed together, heat and heartbeat fusing. When the blaze dimmed, he lay beneath her panting, trembling, but alive, and for the first time, smiling faintly through the exhaustion. "You're stronger than me," he murmured, voice shaking but filled with awe. "No," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. "We're strong because we're together." The ruins groaned overhead, and distant thunder of alien engines rumbled through the night. Yet inside the hollow, it was only them. Their breaths mingled, their bodies tangled, their fire shared. Each kiss was a vow. Each touch was a promise. By the time exhaustion claimed him, his head resting in her lap, she was no longer trembling with fear, but with resolve. She stroked his hair, watching the faint glow beneath his scars settle into something steady, something controlled. Her body ached, her lips were raw, but her heart blazed stronger than it ever had. She had not merely saved him. She had bound herself to him, body and soul, until the fire inside him no longer raged alone. And as she leaned down, pressing one last kiss to his temple before sleep stole him away, she whispered into the dark, "They left you broken, but I'll make the world worship you. Because you're mine, and I'll never let them take you again." The ruins groaned in the night, broken steel beams shifting as the wind howled through shattered concrete. He lay half-propped against a cracked wall, breath steady for the first time since she had dragged him from the battlefield. His wounds had closed more than they should have in so little time, the glow in his scars fading to faint lines that pulsed with a rhythm not his own. She knelt close, wiping grime from his cheek, but even as her touch steadied him, he stared past her, eyes unfocused. "They're still here," he whispered, voice low, almost afraid. She stilled, fingers tightening against his skin. "Who?" "The ones who burned me. The aliens. Their voices, they echo inside my blood. Like they left something behind when they broke me." He shuddered, closing his ember-bright eyes as if to shut them out. "I can hear their commands, their rage, their hunger. It feels like part of me isn't mine anymore." Her heart clenched, but instead of pulling away, she cupped his face and forced his gaze back to her. His pupils flared like coals, firelight trapped in human eyes. "No, whatever they put in you, whatever's inside you, it doesn't own you. I do. Your life, your fire, your soul, they're all yours. And if they try to take them, they'll have to tear them out of my hands first." The fierceness in her voice cut through the silence. He trembled, torn between fear and the need to believe her. When his chest hitched, she pressed her forehead to his, lips brushing his scarred mouth, soft at first, then harder, demanding. He gasped against her, his hand clenching at her hip as if she was the only thing tethering him to earth. The whispers inside him grew louder, a chorus of alien tongues twisting into commands, but her touch drowned them out. She kissed him until the voices dulled, until the fire in his veins bent toward her warmth instead of consuming him. "You see," she murmured against his lips, breath hot. "Every time they try to claim you, I'll take you back. You're mine." Something broke in him then, not the fragile strength he had gathered, but the wall he had built against hope. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her down until she straddled him, their bodies pressed tight. His fire surged, racing across his skin in glowing lines. But instead of flaring out of control, it followed her, glowing wherever her hands traced his body. He kissed her back with a hunger that bordered on desperation, as though only through her could he remain human. In that closeness, something shifted. Their bond stretched beyond flesh, beyond lips and skin. He felt her heartbeat inside his chest, her breath inside his lungs, as if their very souls had begun to intertwine. The alien fire inside him no longer hissed with whispers of domination, but sang with her voice, her defiance, her love. He broke the kiss long enough to whisper hoarsely, "When you touch me, it's quiet. When you kiss me, it's only you. No voices, no chains." His hand shook as it brushed her cheek, his thumb catching her tears. "You're not just saving me, you're remaking me." She kissed his hand, her eyes fierce. "Then let them whisper. Let them rage. We'll turn their poison into our weapon." In the shadows of the ruin, they clung to each other, bodies trembling from exhaustion and the weight of what pressed against them. Yet it was more than survival now. Their bond was fire, devotion, rebellion, and longing woven into one unstoppable flame. By the time dawn painted the sky faint blue through the cracks above, he no longer looked broken. Still scarred, still glowing faintly, yes, but he sat upright with her pressed against him, her head on his shoulder, her fingers tangled with his. The whispers lingered in his blood, but now, when they hissed commands, he laughed softly because her warmth drowned them out every time. He had thought the aliens had left him less than human. But with her, he felt more than human, alive, burning, and defiant. The ruins that had once been their refuge turned into a cage of silence when the footsteps came. She had felt it before she heard it. The shift in the air, the strange hush that only meant death was near. They had trusted too easily. The old man who brought them scraps of food, the one who said he had lost his family to alien fire, had been nothing but a collaborator. His eyes had lingered too long on the man's glow, that unstable alien fire energy sparking through his veins like living lightning. She knew now that he must have whispered what he saw into the ears of their enemies. The betrayal was heavy, a weight pressing against her chest, but there was no time to scream it out. The aliens came in blackened armor, their strange voices like knives, and before she could drag him deeper into hiding, they ripped him from her arms. He fought. God, he fought like something beyond human, thrashing against chains, eyes burning with that unnatural light. But his body was still not whole. The energy within him rebelled at every step, half saving him, half destroying him. It wasn't enough. They bound him, laughed in their guttural alien tongue, and dragged him through the broken city like a prize. She followed, hidden in shadows, her fingernails carving into her palms until blood ran. The broadcast began. Every corner of occupied Earth lit up with the same vision. Him, chained, beaten, stripped of all dignity, forced onto his knees beneath the alien banners. Their leader sneered into the cameras, hissing words that were translated in dozens of human tongues. "This is what your kind becomes when it plays with forbidden fire. Neither human nor one of us. A hybrid freak, a reminder that resistance only breeds corruption." They wanted to break him, not just with chains, but with shame. His face was bruised, blood dripping from his mouth, but his eyes still burned like coals refusing to die. They tortured him. Electrical whips carved lines across his flesh, each lash releasing sparks from the unstable energy inside him. The aliens jeered when his body spasmed, when he gasped in pain but refused to scream. They shoved him before the camera again and again, showing the galaxy how easily a human could be humiliated. Every second of it seared into her, hidden in the shadows of the crowd. Her hands trembled against the dagger she carried, rage singing in her veins, but she knew she couldn't rush forward yet. Not here, not with every gun pointed at his broken body. Still, she could not look away. They called him weak, they called him abomination, but all she saw was a man who refused to bow. Even when his knees buckled, even when blood ran down his back, his chin lifted in defiance. That defiance, that refusal to give them satisfaction, was sharper than any blade. And watching it, her grief shifted. It burned and twisted until it became something else. Rage, uncontainable and pure. She wanted to tear the collaborator apart with her bare hands. She wanted to rip the aliens from their armor and feed them to the fire that slept in his veins. She wanted to show them that worship was not weakness, that the love they mocked as fragile was the very thing that would destroy them. When they lifted his head before the camera, demanding he confess that humanity was broken, she heard his voice, raw but steady. "We don't break," he whispered, and even with blood filling his mouth, even as the aliens laughed, his words carried. They echoed into every listening ear. She pressed her fist to her lips, choking back the sob that threatened to betray her hiding place. They thought they had made an example, but what she saw was the birth of something else. And in that moment, hidden in the ash and ruin, she swore to herself that she would not just rescue him. She would burn the world down to get him back. The worship she had given him in secret now turned into something vast, something dangerous. Love became rebellion. Worship became war. The ashes of betrayal smoldered around her, and from them rose a vow she would never break. The alien stronghold rose out of the earth like a jagged wound, towers of black alloy stabbing at the poisoned sky. The ground around it was scorched and lifeless, patrolled by armored beasts that moved with mechanical precision, their glowing eyes sweeping the ruins for any sign of resistance. To most, it was impenetrable. To her, it was a tomb waiting to be cracked open. Fury gave her courage. Love gave her purpose. She had nothing left to lose. She slipped through the outer rings of security like a shadow made of hunger. Every breath she took was sharp with purpose, every step closer a promise carved into her bones. Her body moved on instinct, a dance of desperation she had rehearsed in the dark of her grief. The stolen dagger she carried was slick with alien blood already. Patrol guards who never saw her coming, who never got to report the human ghost darting through their fortress. Her fury was a compass, and it pointed only to him. Inside the stronghold, the air stank of chemicals and burnt ozone. The corridors pulsed with strange lights, alive with alien language scrawled across metallic walls. She pressed herself against the cold surface, listening to the footsteps of guards marching past. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of chains dragging across stone. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She knew it was him. When she finally reached the cells, her breath caught. He was there, shackled to the wall, his body trembling with exhaustion. But what froze her blood was the fire crawling under his skin. The alien energy that had once glowed faintly now surged in violent pulses, racing through his veins like molten metal, threatening to tear him apart. His eyes were half closed, sweat dripping down his face, and every twitch of pain sent sparks across the stone floor. "Don't come closer," he rasped when he sensed her presence, his voice shredded from screams he would never give them. I can't hold it back much longer." But she was already at his side, falling to her knees, hands trembling as they cupped his bruised face. "You're not breaking without me," she whispered fiercely, her lips brushing his skin like a vow. Her touch steadied him. Even as fire leapt against her palms. She should have pulled back, should have feared the unstable blaze, but instead she leaned into it, letting the heat lick her skin, refusing to flinch. His chains rattled as he tried to stop her, weak protests on his lips, but when her forehead pressed to his, when her breath mingled with his, the fire inside him stilled for the first time in hours. It didn't vanish. It coiled, snarling, ready to erupt, but it recognized her. Her presence had always been his anchor, her touch the worship that kept him human. Now, in the depths of this alien dungeon, it was the only reason he had not shattered completely. She kissed him, a desperate clash of fury and tenderness, her lips tasting of tears and iron. It wasn't passion alone, it was survival. Her kiss dragged him back from the edge, taught the raging energy inside him that it was not master, only fuel. His hands, bound and bloodied, strained against the chains just to reach for her. And when her body pressed against his, the unstable flames flickered, softened, and for a heartbeat, it almost felt like peace. In the shadows of that cell, where walls hummed with alien machinery and guards prowled just beyond, they built a sanctuary from nothing but touch. Her kisses trailed across his scars. Her whispers stitched him back together. and the way she pressed her body against his told him that he was still wanted, still needed, still human enough to be loved. He could feel the chains biting into his wrists, but with her pressed against him, he no longer felt like a prisoner. The fire inside him coiled tighter, drawn into rhythm with her heartbeat. The whispers that had haunted him, alien voices threading through his veins, dulled under the sound of her breathing. She gave him something louder to cling to, devotion, fierce and unrelenting. She didn't care if the aliens found them. She didn't care if the fire burned her alive. In that moment, there was only one truth. She would not let him die chained. "Hold on," she whispered against his lips, her tears mixing with sweat. "I'll burn this place to the ground if I have to, but I won't leave you." His breath hitched, the fire flaring, but this time it didn't consume him. It bowed to her touch, to her defiance, as though it too understood that she was the only one keeping him whole. And though he was bound in chains, though his body was at the edge of breaking, in her arms he felt something alien and human both, the strange holiness of being worshipped, not as a monster, but as a man worth saving. The moment their lips met, the world outside the cell ceased to exist. Chains, guards, alien towers, none of it mattered. What mattered was the fire running wild beneath his skin and the way her touch tamed it, not with force but with devotion. For weeks the alien energy had been tearing him apart from the inside, snarling like a beast without a leash. But now, with her pressed against him, with her body wrapped around his broken one, the blaze bent to her will. It no longer raged aimlessly, it flowed. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her fingers tracing the glowing cracks along his chest, as if she were caressing sacred scripture. "You're not a weapon," she whispered, voice fierce. "You're mine." The fire inside him answered, flaring bright but steady, no longer unstable sparks threatening to rip through his flesh. It was as though her words had rewritten him, anchored him. He could feel it, the way her love shaped the blaze. Where before the energy had been chaos, now it pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her body, her worship, her furious devotion gave it direction. Each kiss softened its edges. Each brush of her lips against his scars gave it form. His fire was no longer destruction alone. It was rebellion. It was survival. Chains still bound his wrists, but when she pressed closer, kissing the bruises on his shoulders, the iron links began to glow red, strained by the heat of his controlled flames. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of burning her. For the first time, the fire didn't lash out blindly. It wrapped around her like a second skin, warming instead of devouring, as though even the alien energy itself had chosen her. She gasped softly against his mouth, her hands sliding down his back, not with hesitation but reverence. Every caress was a vow that he was not a monster, not an experiment, not a broken soldier left to die. He was hers, and with every whisper of her lips, every desperate embrace, the fire inside him stopped being curse and became something holy. Together, they moved in the shadows of that cell, the air around them charged, alive, vibrating with more than passion. The alien walls hummed with stolen technology, but their bodies hummed louder, flesh and fire merging into one force. Each breath was rebellion. Each kiss was defiance. Their intimacy was no longer survival alone. It was worship. Worship of each other, of what they had become together. The fire spread, not outward but upward, coiling around the chains, searing the locks until they burst. His arms fell free, and he caught her against him, lifting her as if he were no longer bound by weakness or wounds. She gasped, eyes wide as she looked at the flames surrounding them, but she didn't pull away. She held tighter, lips brushing his ear. "You're free. We're free." And he knew then that their love had reshaped him. He was no longer the man the aliens had tried to break, no longer the half-dead soldier they mocked. He was something else, something more. Flesh and fire, human and beyond human. And she, his anchor, his worshiper and his goddess, was the only reason he could carry it without being consumed. When the guards burst into the cell, weapons raised, they froze at the sight before them. a man of fire and a woman of steel in his arms, bound together by something they couldn't comprehend. His flames didn't lash out wildly, they obeyed. They curled at his fists, shaped themselves into spears of burning light, licked at his skin without harming her. And with a roar that was half love, half defiance, he hurled the fire forward. Walls cracked, guards burned, alarms blared. But through it all, she clung to him, her lips finding his even in chaos. Their passion was a storm the aliens could not cage. Their worship was rebellion given flesh. Together, they didn't just escape the dungeon. They ignited a revolution. The broadcast tower loomed like a black spear stabbed into the heart of the colony, humming with alien power, spitting out lies across every world they had enslaved. It was here that they had once shown him broken, chained, mocked as less than human. It was here they had tried to humiliate him and crush the human spirit with the sight of his torment. Now, hand in hand, their bodies still carrying the marks of fire and devotion, they stormed its gates together. His flames surged around them, no longer wild but sculpted, bending to his will as though they too worshipped her presence. She walked beside him with fierce grace, her torn clothes clinging to a body that bore the scars of battle, yet glowed with untamed defiance. Wherever they moved, alien soldiers faltered, not because of his fire alone, but because of the sight of them together. Two souls, fused by intimacy and rebellion, unstoppable because they believed in each other. Inside the tower's heart, alien commanders barked in their guttural language, preparing to broadcast another show of dominance. But when he and she stormed the chamber, the cameras turned toward them, and for once the eyes of Billion saw not submission, but fire. He stood tall, flames curling from his arms, scars glowing like runes of rebellion. She pressed close to him, not as a shadow, not as someone hiding behind a hero, but as his equal, her hand gripping his, her lips brushing his cheek with the tenderness of a vow. Before the galaxies, she showed that his power wasn't madness, wasn't alien corruption. It was love, human and unstoppable. The feed spread faster than the aliens could cut it. Across every colony, humans stared at their screens as the once broken soldier and the woman who worshipped him with fire and tenderness turned their torment into defiance. His voice echoed through the towers, low and fierce. You wanted to show my death. You wanted to show my chains. Now watch. Watch what love makes of your fire. Then he kissed her, right there on the broadcast, flames wrapping them in light without burning. Billion saw it. Not just the fury of a soldier, but the intimacy of two hearts unbroken. That kiss was more than passion. It was rebellion itself, searing through every transmission line, sparking hope like kindling. Colonists erupted across the stars. Shackled miners dropped their tools and picked up weapons. Starving families tore down alien banners. Secret resistance cells emerged from hiding, emboldened by the sight of two lovers who turned execution into legend. What had been despair became uprising. The aliens panicked. Warships swarmed the skies, but when his fire burst upward from the towers, they burned like paper lanterns. He was not alone in this blaze. Her arms wrapped around him, her devotion shaping his fire, channeling it so it did not consume itself. Together, they hurled flame into the heavens, a duet of love and fury that tore open the night. Billions watched as alien dreadnoughts, once untouchable, fell in showers of fire. And through it all, the broadcast never faltered. Humans saw not only the flames, but the bond that fueled them. They saw her whisper in his ear, saw him touch her face with tenderness even as they fought, saw the raw humanity that the aliens could never destroy. They had tried to make him a symbol of defeat. Instead, he and she became something greater, worshipped not as gods, but as proof that love, even in ashes, could ignite revolutions. By the time the broadcast cut, the uprising had already begun. Colonies burned with rebellion. Warships crumbled, and on every tongue, a legend rose. The fire of two lovers who turned humiliation into worship, chains into sparks, and despair into the uprising that would change everything. The battlefield was nothing but smoke and embers now. Alien towers that had once scraped the heavens lay cracked and molten, their steel bones bending like the corpses of giants. The skies still glowed red from the fires he had unleashed, fire that should have consumed everything, including himself. Yet here he stood, bare-chested and scarred, his body a vessel of strange light. His skin pulsed with faint threads of alien energy, veins glowing faintly like rivers of molten gold. His eyes no longer entirely human, but lit from within, eternal flames staring out into a ruined dawn. He swayed on his feet as though the earth beneath him no longer felt solid, as though his soul had slipped free and only her touch anchored him. And then she was there, rushing through ash and ruin, her hands grabbing his arms, pulling him against her chest. His fire licked around her skin, dangerous, untamed, and yet it did not burn her. It curled against her like warmth, like recognition. She buried her face against his shoulder and whispered, "You're still mine." For a moment, he did not answer. His lips trembled, caught between memory and flame, between the man he once was and the being he had become. But then he lifted his hand, a hand glowing faintly with alien fire, and pressed it against her cheek. The flames dimmed as her skin met his, as though her love were stronger than the inferno inside him. His voice, ragged but alive, broke through the crackle of ash. "Always yours, even when I was chains, even when I was fire, even when I was nothing." Around them, humans began to gather, colonists, fighters, survivors of the uprising. Their faces were streaked with soot and blood, but their eyes were wide, awed, disbelieving. They had seen the broadcast. They had watched the flames consume the skies, seen him rise from chains into fire, seen her stand unbroken beside him. Now they fell to their knees, whispers spreading through the crowd. Savior, God, legend. He looked at them with burning eyes, but it was her hand gripping his that kept him grounded, kept him from drifting into the role they wanted to place on his shoulders. "They think I'm something I'm not," he murmured. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear, her voice fierce, steady. "Let them worship. Let them believe. You're not their God. You're mine." That kiss, her lips pressed to his flame-lit skin, was soft, but it burned deeper than any blaze. The colonists gasped as though witnessing holy fire, but for the two of them it was nothing but survival, nothing but love refusing to break. When their lips parted, the world seemed smaller, quieter. Across the colonies, their story had already taken root. Holoscreens replayed the images of fire and devotion. Songs spread through underground channels, poems whispered by children, prayers murmured by the enslaved. Humanity was no longer bowing to alien rule. They were bowing to an idea that two broken souls, bound together, could rise higher than fear. Alien warships, once the masters of the skies, fled before human uprisings. Weapons were seized, banners torn down. And through every act of rebellion, their names were spoken like talismans. They had not asked to be gods, but humanity had given them that place regardless. Later, when the smoke cleared and the colony was theirs again, he and she walked among the ruins. He no longer needed to hide what he had become. His eyes glowed constantly now, eternal flame that could never dim. His body hummed with alien power that no human technology could explain. But when he wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close, he was not a god. He was the broken man she had found bleeding in the ashes. They lay together that night in the ruins of what had once been an alien palace. Around them, survivors sang songs of victory, lit fires in the streets, raised her name alongside his in reverence. Yet when he pressed his lips against her neck, when her hands clutched his scarred back, when their bodies moved together in the shadows, none of that mattered. He was not worshipped. He was hers. And she, fierce and unyielding, worshipped nothing but the fire they made together. "Do you ever wish it had ended on the battlefield?" he whispered against her skin, fear flickering even in his eternal flames. She silenced him with a kiss, with the press of her body against his. "No," she breathed. Because this is the truth. Not gods, not saviors, just us. And that is enough. Outside, humanity raised their names into the stars. Inside, in the quiet of their embrace, love burned brighter than worship, brighter than rebellion. When dawn came, he stood before the people, her hand in his, and they looked upon him as though he were immortal flame incarnate. But the only eyes he met were hers, and in them he found not fear, not awe, but the simple, raw truth that had saved him from death. He was broken, she was fierce, and together they had turned mortality into legend. From that day, their story was sung across every colony. The man left broken, the woman who made him worshipped, and the love that turned death into immortality. And though the world called them gods, though humanity worshipped them as eternal flame, in the end it was simpler than all of that. He was hers, she was his, and their fire would never die.